Is this thought mine? Do I want it? If the answers are no, then completely ignore the evil one. And the way to ignore him, the way to fight him and defeat him, is to engage God. Don't engage him in any way. The more these thoughts, these flies try to distract you, the more focused get yourself on God. The more he screams around you, me, it's about me, make this about me, this time make it about me, look at me, focus on me, defeat me. The more he screams me around you, the more quiet and focused be before God. Remind yourself, as St. John of the Ladder teaches us, remind yourself that you stand before God himself. And then you are not giving any entry to these thoughts. And in time, because you've not received them, and because evil by itself does not have substance, it will just die out.
God is the Lord, and has appeared unto us. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. All the nations compass me round about, and by the name of the Lord I warded them off. God is the Lord, and has appeared unto us. Blessed is he that cometh
Hello,
in
my
the
dear
name
ones.
of the Lord.
I hadn't really intended to record a second video on this topic. I hadn't intended to go any deeper in this particular subject, but two things have happened. On the one hand, I've noticed a great number of comments on the previous video, which means that this is affecting a lot of us. And that means that if I can do something to be of help, I should. The other side of the story is that among those comments, I've seen a lot of pieces of advice which I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to follow. And you can blame it on me being a monastic, but I'm not at peace applying any sort of modern, contemporary wisdom that goes against the advice of the Holy Fathers, particularly when the fathers we are referring to are the desert fathers who have fought with the evil one in a way that we shall never experience. Glory be to God. Glory be to God. I would always, at any time, in any circumstance, choose the advice of the desert fathers over anything any of the modern contemporary psychologists, therapists, philosophers, whatever they are, advise us to do. So for those two reasons, I want to share with you what I know, which is very little, mind you. I have to say this from the very beginning, but it is what I know from the fathers concerning fighting these evil thoughts, evil images that are attacking us during prayer. And that entire advice, that entire tradition of the fathers can be reduced to one word: ignore. Do not interact in any way. Do not get yourself involved in any way with the evil one. Even if it feels righteous, even if it feels like, oh, I'm doing battle and I'm winning in this battle. I'll go into a bit of detail, but first I want to give you two simple tools that have helped me not get trapped, not get involved into this dialogue with the evil one. Whenever I note an evil thought or a bad image approaching me in prayer, I've learned to ask myself two questions. One, do I want this? And two, is this mine? Do I want this? Do I want this particular thought? Do I want this particular image? Do I want this memory? Is this my doing, in other words? Do I want this now? And there is a very clear, immediate answer that gets yelled from the depth of your heart if it is a yes or if it is a no. And one of the clearer signs that this is not something you want is that you feel dirty, you feel like you shudder away from it. You do not allow it to become material by turning it into words or into deeds, by not allowing it to enter your mind, and then you entertain it and you develop it and you get yourself trapped in this circle of thinking. If you do that, if you shudder away with disgust and with horror from the image or the thought that attacks you, and you do not want, there's no desire in you to welcome that thought in you, then that's the end of it. That's the end of any sort of interaction, conversation with that particular thought. And even in this case, I want to stress this, you are not asking the thought, you are not addressing the image, you are asking yourself, do I want this? I am asking myself. I am not in any way engaging with the image or the thought. The second question is this mine? Which is more subtle, but extremely important. It's extremely important because you have to understand that evil in and of itself doesn't have a substance. It does not exist in and of itself. Evil only has being, only comes into existence when a person, a living being, is uniting his or her will with that particular thought. So in other words, as long as I don't accept that evil thought or image in myself, it lacks substance. It does not properly exist. It only comes into being if I give it being, if I allow it to... it's like an insect that would like to prick your skin to lay its eggs inside you. As long as it doesn't happen, as long as you don't open yourself to the thought, then that insect and its eggs have no chance of life. That's why, just a random thought, that's why when we pray the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, we do not say at the very end, and deliver us from evil, but deliver us from the evil one. Because of the same reason, evil in itself has no substance. The evil one, the reality of a spiritual being which has welcomed evil and acted out evil, gives evil substance and the reality of existence. Which is why it is so important for us to ask this second question. After, do I want this? Is this mine? And if it is not yours, if the source of it is not in you, then you are not guilty of anything. You are not guilty of absolutely anything, and there is no reason for you to react in any way, to respond in any way. Ultimately, the entire purpose of these attacks, the only thing the evil one wants to do is to distract you from prayer, to distract you from the one thing you are supposed to be doing at that time, which is communion with God. Remember, dear ones, that we are not yet finished. We have not yet reached our full potential. We are in a state of development. We are in a state of, like a fetus in a womb. We grow, we evolve, we develop. And we shall develop into the image which we reflect. In prayer, we face God. We are facing Him face to face, person to person. As long as we are looking at God, we are slowly being shaped into the image which is naturally ours, the image of God into which we have been created. Which is why the devil is absolutely desperate to turn our focus away from that action of facing God. And he will use anything to get that done. The devil is an amazing actor, an absolutely brilliant actor, and he also has the horrible advantage that he has very closely watched us since we were created in the wombs of our mothers, and then as we grew into the adults we are today. He knows our weaknesses, he knows our past, he knows to what we respond, and he will use anything to distract us from facing God in prayer. And you will notice that because very frequently he's going to use good things. He's going to use valid worries about your job or about your family. He's going to use even prayer itself. The fathers are very, very careful to warn us against giving too much attention to the way in which we pray, particularly when we sing the Psalms, for instance, because the devil will use anything, including the how of prayer, the method of prayer, in order to distract us from the one living being, God, whom we should be facing in prayer. This is all theater, nothing else but spiritual theater, which the devil puts on by our side, surrounding us with all these images and all these excitements which he knows we have responded to in the past, and he does that in order to distract us from the act of prayer, and so that we can refocus our mind and our hearts and our beings from God and focus on him. And that is because, as we've said earlier, the devil is aware that we are slowly shaped onto the image which we reflect, onto the image which is mirrored on our consciousness and our souls. And as long as we are facing God in prayer, that image of God reflected, imprinted, mirrored onto our souls will slowly shape us into being increasingly more God-like, which is our proper calling, our proper real being. And the devil wants us to abandon this act of reflecting the face of God onto our souls and switch our souls towards him and his actions so that we reflect him. And that weakens us, and that opens us once again to passions which we have long ago managed to defeat. And in time, instead of becoming God-like, we become, may that happen to no one, but the risk is that we become not God-like, but devil-like. This is why ignoring everything is the only valid way of fighting against these attacks. St. John of the Ladder, for instance, St. John of the Ladder is the one teacher of prayer in whom we should trust 101%. And he agrees 101% with everything that the desert fathers who lived before him have taught him, his generation, and our generation. When the devil attacks you, you must respond by refocusing your attention on God. The simple fact that you've noticed these attacks, and the fathers describe these attacks like flies just buzzing around to catch your attention. The simple fact that we've noticed these attacks is already a signal that we've weakened our prayer. And the way to fight these attacks, say the Desert Fathers and St. John of the Ladder, the way to fight these attacks is to remind yourself that you are standing before God. Notice what they do. The way to fight the evil one is to remind yourself that you are standing before God. This fight against the evil one has nothing to do with the evil one himself. They don't say curse him or laugh at him or mock him or do anything concerning him. Absolutely nothing. Completely completely ignore those attacks and just refocus yourself, remind yourself that you are facing God Himself in prayer. And that will keep you safe because you are continuing to reflect the image of God, and at the same time it denies evil the chance to take being in you. It denies evil the chance to lay its eggs in you. You know, I understand things better if I visualize them, and that's why this image of flies has been so helpful to me. To put things in a different visual way, if, for instance, you are attacked at the beginning of your time of prayer by images and thoughts, and you manage to get a stick, and you spend the 10 minutes or 1 hour of your prayer time kicking, beating up the devil, like physically beating him up and spitting on him and cursing him, at the end of your prayer, you have actually been defeated. You have not been victorious. You haven't come out victorious of this battle, although you've spent your entire time cursing the evil one and physically beating him up with a stick. Again, this is a visual image, just so I can understand better what the fathers are teaching us. There is not a victory but a defeat, because although it looks like you've been the victor, in fact what has happened is that you have stopped reflecting, stopped mirroring God onto your soul, and you have refocused on the evil one. What has happened is that you have made those 10 minutes or 1 hour of your prayer not about God, but about the evil one. Do you see how horrible actually that is? That the time that you intended to offer to God in prayer, you've made that time about the evil one, not about God. The evil one will do anything to distract us from prayer, including play defeat. He's going to collapse on the floor, and he's going to keep on crying and asking for mercy and encourage us to stop hitting him, because he knows that that's going to tickle our pride. And we are going to keep on engaging him, seemingly defeating him, when in fact he's tricking us and defeating us by turning our attention from the one life-giving being, God Himself, and refocusing us onto Him. He will do anything to turn your prayer time into a devil time, into a he time, instead of a God time. The simple reality is that as long as we are going to walk towards God, we are going to be fought. So we should actually take comfort from the reality of these attacks. Because as long as we are attacked, that means that we are walking in the right direction. There will be no peace from these attacks. Again, if you read the Holy Fathers, if you read the Fathers of the Desert in particular, you'll see some horrible example. Saint Paphnutius, for instance, he, during the time of his martyrdom, Saint Paphnutius, during the time of his martyrdom, was attacked by thoughts of blasphemy. So the evil one, even as Saint Paphnutius was literally offering his life as a sacrifice for his faith in God, he was tempted by the evil one, even as he was dying as a martyr for Christ, with evil images and blasphemous thoughts. Take comfort from this and find courage in these stories, because they simply mean that we are following these saints. And if we are following in their footsteps, that means that by the grace of God and under the protection of the Mother of God and with their prayer, we shall also, by the grace of God, find salvation and be with them in the kingdom. Is this thought mine? Do I want it? If the answers are no, then completely ignore the evil one. And the way to ignore him, the way to fight him and defeat him, is to engage God. Don't engage him in any way. The more these thoughts, these flies try to distract you, the more focused get yourself on God. The more he screams around you, me, 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 it's about me, make this about me, this time make it about me, look at me, focus on me, defeat me. The more he screams me, me, me around you, the more quiet and focused be before God. Remind yourself, as St. John of the Ladder teaches us, remind yourself that you stand before God himself. And then you are not giving any entry to these thoughts. And in time, because you've not received them, and because evil by itself does not have substance, it will just die out. Remember that saying of the Desert Fathers, dear ones, that if you put scorpions and venomous snakes and insects into one jar and you cover it with a lid and you leave it there, in time they are going to devour each other and just die out. The same principle applies to evil thoughts and images. Fight them by completely ignoring them and never in any way engaging them. Prayer time is between you and God, and you should remind yourself at every attack that I am here to face God, full stop. And the more you do that, the better you do that, the attacks will just disappear, because of course the evil one doesn't want to be himself a tool for you to pray better. So if he sees that you ignore him and that every time he attacks you, you refocus on God, he will understand that he's actually helping you pray better. And in time, he will go away. He will not disappear. He will find other ways to fight you. But at least these thoughts and these images will become less frequent. I love you all so much in Christ. And I'm so happy that, again, this feels now like a conversation. I appreciate that. I thank you for all your comments. I thank you for all the support you are sending for the monastery. I kept meaning to thank you, but then I stopped because I didn't want this to be mainly about that. But we do need the help, and we appreciate it more than I can possibly express it. Be blessed, dear ones, and keep us all at the monastery in your prayers. Amen, amen, amen.